Good evening. For the safety of our entire community, Tempe Union continues to practice social distancing. We are limited as to the number of people we are able to seat in the boardroom, but members of the public are attending our meeting in person. We're also streaming our meeting live on the district's YouTube channel. The time is now 7 o'clock p.m. Call this meeting to order. Let the record show that we have 5 board members present. And I move to adopt the agenda. May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. All right, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. The agenda is adopted. Next, we have call for executive session. Does any member wish to go into executive session? Hearing none, seeing none. All right, we will continue. Welcome, everyone. We are excited to have you here. We will begin with the presentation of colors, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Member Barraza, and followed by a moment of silence, and then the land acknowledgement by Dr. Keller. But before we do that, I want to make sure that we introduce folks here for a presentation of colors. Dr. Mendeville.
Thank you, President Garcia, members of the board, present audience, in the audience present in today's, we're not used to having people in the boardroom, so we're glad that you're here, actually. But those who are viewing and listening at home, so welcome to our meeting today. I do want to acknowledge our student JROTC members. They are led by Major Robert Four, but our student cadets are Jarek Agnet, Reagan Willia, Sagan Wallace, and Alex Muschoris. And I apologize, I saw you chuckle there, that if I mispronounced any names, correct me later on, okay? Thank you. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Tempe Union High School District acknowledges that our community of schools is located on the ancestral lands of the Akmal Autumn, Pima, and Pipash Maricopa indigenous peoples who have inhabited these lands since time immemorial. With this land acknowledgement, the district formally recognizes that the traditional care and keeping of these lands by indigenous peoples allow us to be here today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Keller. All right, the next item on our agenda is the report from the superintendent. We have school recognition, the Marcos de Niza boys varsity soccer. Dr. Mendeville.
Thank you, President Garcia, members of the board. Those in attendance, again, we appreciate you being here. Marcos de Niza, please stand. Congratulations to the Marcos boys varsity team, selected as this year's recipient of the 2022 AIA 4A Conference Sportsmanship Award. This award is handed out annually in each conference to the team exhibiting the highest level of sportsmanship as voted on by AIA officials. To me, that's huge. because you epitomize what we should be practicing on the fields, and I really appreciate that. We all do. We are extremely proud of our student athletes for representing Marcus Deniza and the entire district with pride and respect. Coach Bobby Davis and assistant coaches Ian Parkinson, Shane Tush Farber, Eli Allen, Abe Andrade, and Colin Lamb demonstrate the epitome of sportsmanship on and off the field. Their influence will stay with these young men for the rest of their lives. I ask that you come forward and say a few comments if you'd like. Coaches? Right to that microphone over there.
Check, 1, 2, check. Thank you, first of all of you, for having us here. This is a tremendous honor, as I stated in the email correspondence back and forth. We're very honored to be here. The plan was to bring everybody, but I guess there's this disease going around, so we weren't able to bring quite everyone. We're represented today by our captain, Moss Williams, who has over the last, 4 years at Marcos, and 5 if you include the year I had him at the middle school, has done everything you could ever ask a kid or a captain to do. We had a very young team this year, lots of freshmen and sophomores on the varsity team, and I cannot think of a better young man to lead them into what was, it's a long year and it's tough when you're a lot younger than everybody. And, usually it's like their brothers on the team. Moss was dad. They came to him for everything. He's a tremendous young man, and he was a great leader of young men. 2 captains who are gone today, Chemo Garcia is with his club team, and Uriel Perez Quezada is with his club team as well tonight, but those were 2 other captains who helped to instill the culture. I've been the head coach, this was my 9th year. When I took over, it was my goal and the staff's goal to create a team full of good people, good students, and if they're lucky enough to be good athletes. And it was incredibly meaningful to get this award this year because we do, all of us, the staff included, take it very seriously. We don't, you can ask Moss, we don't put up with bad grades, we certainly don't put up with bad behavior. So to see it recognized by the officials was critical. There were a couple games down the stretch, games that we need to win to get into the playoffs, where my boys really, they were just incredible people. Soccer's weird. The ref is not allowed to blow the whistle when someone's hurt, unless it is like he's going to die. So in order for the game to stop, someone has to play the ball off of the field. And there were 2 games down the stretch where we were ahead, trying to hold onto the ball and hold onto the lead, where an opponent collapsed, and he was clearly hurt. And in both of those instances, no one from our sideline, not a single coach, had to yell to play the ball off. In both instances, both of our boys played the ball off, despite the fact that that was the wrong thing to do if you're trying to win, despite the fact that it was not advantageous. They both, without a thought, played the ball out of bounds. And Uriel, one of the other captains who's not here, played the ball out of bounds and immediately started waving towards me because he knew that the important thing here was not a high school soccer game, but the health of his opponent. That is infinitely more meaningful to me than any sort of wins or awards, and we are obviously still pushing towards those, but this will be the greatest achievement I ever accomplish as the head coach of Marcus Deniza. Thank you again for having us here, and we hope to continue making you proud in years to come.
Thank you very much, and I am certain under your leadership that will continue. So thank you again. That concludes my report.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mendenhall. All right, now is the time for public comment. Members of the governing board may not discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or scheduling the matter for further consideration and a decision at a later date. Governing board meetings are open to the public. Therefore, public comment is accepted in person only. Dr. Mendenhall.
Thank you. We'll start off with Alyssa Richardson.
So So to start off, I'm Alyssa. I'm a freshman on the Desert Vista varsity cheer team. When I first started as a freshman on varsity, I had a lot of like younger girls my age like try to get me off the team, and Coach Johnny, like the one coach that ever did stand up for me, made it one of the best years of cheer that I've had. And she's helped me through so much with when I had a huge mental block and I couldn't throw anything, and now having skills that I've never really had on hard floor before. And seeing how much she's done for this team and knowing that she will probably not be coaching next year, even though she's been through a lot with this team. And with the Desert Vista cheer team, I don't think they've never made it to finals. Yeah, no, they've never made it to finals and for nationals. And she took our team from not even being able to hit like extensions or lower level stunts to almost winning a national title in California. That's it. I just hope that, I just think it's not fair that she's not going to be able to be here next year over.
Thank you. Jamie Richardson, mom.
Yes, I'm Alyssa's mom.
Okay.
I'm here today to speak on behalf of the Desert Vista cheer team and Coach Donnie. She has, as Alyssa said, she has done so much for the Desert Vista cheer team. When we started out, the team was kind of, they were just kind of all over. Oh, sorry. They were kind of all over, a bit of a hot mess, I'd say. And I tell you, they got all the way to the nationals, and they made the finals for the first time ever. As a team, they've grown together. They've become a family. I saw these girls start out, none of them knew each other at all. Coach Donnie set up team bondings for them. It was super important for her to keep all the girls together, both teams. They practiced together. They did all kinds of team things together. It was super important for her. And my daughter has not ever felt like so much of a family as she has on this cheer team. I truly believe that is Coach Donnie and Coach Kira's influence on these girls, because it takes that leader to bring those girls together. My daughter was bullied pretty heavily by some of the younger girls. She made the varsity team as a freshman. That's pretty rare. And Coach Donnie really kind of helped her work through that. She's 14 years old. That's kind of a hard thing to deal with for her. And Coach Donnie and the other varsity girls really took her in and made her feel like she belonged there, and that's important. She's been in all-star cheer for a lot of years, since she was 6 years old. We've seen good coaches, we've seen bad coaches. Anytime the girls had a rough day, a rough performance, both of those coaches sat there, hugged every single girl, wiped every tear from their cheeks, and told them, hey, you know what, we're going to get them next time. We're going to do this. You guys are great. You're strong. Every girl, every time. And I just feel like that's something that this team needs that they've never had before. We're new here, so like I said, I'm just a parent. I'm not on any committees. I'm not anybody important, I guess, but I'm a parent that sees a good coach, and we're really, really devastated to lose her. So I'm here just pleading for her to stay, for her to keep us a family, to keep our team a family. That's it.
Thank you. Isabel Gutierrez.
Good evening. I'm also here with the Desert Vista cheer team. I'm one of the 3 captains here tonight. I'm also one of the 5 seniors on the team. but I am the only returning member who has been on the team for 4 years. No one on my freshman team decided to continue cheerleading all 4 years because of the disorganization and instability of the program. There's nothing worse than wanting to focus on building yourself as an athlete and a teammate, but being unable to because your program is undergoing constant change, like receiving new coaching staff. Out of my 4 years on the team, I have never had the same coach every year. These changes take a toll on athletes' mental and physical well-being because instead of focusing their time and energy on executing the sport, they are spent dealing with adjusting to changes. Thankfully, this season we were able to have coaches that actually care about our personal and athletic well-being. They have spent hours revising our routines to max out score sheets, teaching new skills, having special team bonding events, and making a safe environment for our team. These coaches finally stand up for us, and it's time for someone to stand up for them. Today, we would like to recognize that the respect our coaches deserve are not given to them by the district, fellow staff, and some parents. In order to continue our legacy and success that the team has achieved this season, we must recognize the unfairness our coaches and many other coaches have been receiving at our schools. Teaching students that these interactions should not be tolerated but then replicated throughout the district is hypocritical and should not be tolerated. So again, I just wanted to recognize how important these coaches are in our life and how much of an impact they've had on us. So thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Carrie Watson.
I'm also speaking on behalf of Desert Vista Cheer Program. I am on the booster board. We had addressed, my daughter's been on varsity since she was a freshman. I have addressed, as a board, we addressed that we needed qualified, certified, and coaches with years of experience to make our program better, especially since we got moved from activities to athletics. And we were told that we needed to make state. In order to do that, we have to have great coaches. We have a great coach. Unfortunately, we have through my own personal experience with what I am dealing with, as my daughter has been accused of allegations of bullying from a member on the team and a parent. I am saying that I have lost all my trust in not only DV administration, but in Tempe Union School District administration. I have seen, and I don't know if the governing board knows, that our JV team was, I guess, paperwork was pushed through because I worked hard on that paperwork, so did the co-president, and so did the coach, on getting our girls to go to nationals. And what happened? JV wasn't supposed to go. We submitted our check, we submitted our paperwork, we worked hard on it, we worked with the administration to get our paperwork passed by the governing board. We found out they copied our varsity paperwork, and also, and I don't know if the board is aware, that there were no coaches' signatures on the JV paperwork, and it got passed through too. So I am very disappointed in the way that the district, the administration has handled things. Our athletic director needs to be looked at, as well as our principal. And there are other individuals on the board, or not on the board, I'm sorry, within our district that need to be investigated as well. Absolutely lost all trust. Can't even, my daughter, being a junior, I do not feel comfortable with her talking to any administrator because everything gets turned around, and our coach, who just got fired tonight, is fired because our administration at DV has not taken responsibility for the actions that have happened regarding bullying situations, regarding the national situations. They've all thrown our coach under the bus, and it's not fair.
Thank you. Kylie Weatherly.
Hi, I'm Kylie Weatherly, and I'm also one of the captains here for the DV cheer team. I'm normally not a very active person in our school community because I'm very non-confrontational. I don't like to speak my feelings very much. But what is happening in our program is wrong and needs to be put to an end. Our coach's job is on the line. Well, I guess, as she said, it's gone. But she has done nothing except better our program with numerous wins at competitions. She took our team to finals at nationals for the first time in DV history, as well as took the time to build what I believe to be a true dream team. Coaching can be described as a process that aims to improve the performance of athletes. Our coach takes it a step further and improves the mentality of her athletes. She turned a broken team of a bunch of girls who love cheer and made them a family that loves cheer and most importantly each other, which is the hardest job of them all. Our coach is the reason our cheer program is excelling and it needs to be addressed. Parents of the athletes in the DV cheer program should not be allowed to hold the power that they do over the Desert Vista Athletics department, and I believe some revisions need to be made to this department to ensure that they are following proper guidelines that haven't been followed this year. The whole team signed a contract at the beginning of our season, and we know exactly what is to be expected of us, as well as what the athletic department expects of us to uphold these rules, and their job was to uphold these rules and failed. With this being said, this program belongs to the athletes and coaching staff who are at practice every day, giving their all, not the parents still living in high school. I've seen numerous coaches come and go during my time here, and this is not one I'm willing to let go. She has brought so much to our program, I can't even express this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And last, David Rojas.
Hi, my name is David Rojas. I'm a junior at McClintock High School. I'm here to speak on the issue of early school start times. On the first page of the Tempe Union High School District website, it lists core values and beliefs, and the very first belief listed is, quote, "We put students' academic and social emotional needs at the forefront of everything we do," unquote. As I stated at the last school board meeting, all of the evidence shows that starting schools earlier than 8:30 in the morning contributes negatively to the social, emotional, and academic needs of students. The main obstacle to starting school earlier is cost, and 2 weeks ago, the school district and every school district in the state were facing an almost existential threat, the aggregate expenditure limit. However, luckily that limit's been raised for the time being. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I had the pleasure to sit down and speak with Dr. Meneville and Vice President Montero, and they helped show me the other obstacles to starting school later. But one key theme was shared among all those obstacles listed, and that's that they can each be overcome. It only takes the will to do it. One of the great pieces of luck this school district has is that many other school districts have done what I'm proposing. They each started out by spending tens and thousands on making reports on how exactly they would go about starting schools later. I know this because these reports on exactly how they do that are freely available on the internet. After the last meeting, each of you came up and spoke with me. You all expressed that you agreed with me that schools start too early. That's something you have in common with both the vast majority of the students and all of the many teachers I've spoken to about this issue within the past month. Some of these people even, put their names down to show that. I'm glad you all have similar feelings on the issue as me, but you also have something that I don't, and that's, the power to do something about it. I implore you to live up to the belief stated on your website and put the academic, social, and emotional needs of your students first by starting schools later.
Thank you.
Is that it for public comment?
We are done with
Okay.
public comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. Next, we will continue with consent agenda item. As a reminder, board, due to policies and open meeting laws, I'm not able to address specific issues raised during public comment. Next, with consent agenda item, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you so much, Vice President Montero. May I have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Sorry, y'all. This is a little, okay, here we go. Next, we have the second public hearing for the instructional time model. Dr. Mandeville.
Thank you, President Garcia, Vice President Montero, and members of the board. This is the second public hearing to allow for public comment only on this particular item of instructional time model that was presented at the February 2nd board meeting. And I don't think we have any public comment, so I think we can move on.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Mandeville. Next is teaching and learning, revised instructional time model. Dr. Mandeville.
We have complied with the 2 public hearings and the presentation that was provided to you on February 2nd on the amendments to our current instructional time model, and now is a time for action where you would need to vote on this. The administration recommends that the governing board approve this particular item regarding the revised instructional time model as submitted.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Mandeville. Board members, any thoughts, comments, or questions on this item? Hearing none, seeing none. All right, I move approval of H1, revised instructional time model. May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Next, we have item 2, school learning goals and outcomes. Dr. Mandeville.
Thank you, President Garcia and Vice President Montero and members of the board. We have a presentation from Teaching and Learning we're excited about. We need to get right into the root and the thick of what our priorities should be right now, and that is ensuring that our students are learning at high levels and that we're understanding the responsibilities that entails, both in the classroom and in the support that we provide as a district. And so Mrs. Hilgers and Dr. Lexick are going to be assisting with the presentation. Take it away, Mrs. Hilgers.
Okay. President Garcia, members of the governing board, Superintendent Mandeville, and executive team. It's our pleasure tonight to share information with you about our school learning goals and outcomes. And so I want to share with you, a little bit about what we're going to share with you tonight. The first thing that we wanted to do is share with you some of the cultural shifts, some of the mindsets that we've been trying to create and to work through with our staff members during the past 5 years. Then share with you we went through an accreditation review last year, what we gleaned from that review at our sites, and then how we developed our goals in that process. From those goals and those action plans, what we've done this school year, the data analysis that we've done, the goal recommendations, and some of the action steps that filtered into the sites. And then we wanted to share with you a little bit about our ACT and our practice assessments in the fall and the winter, where we were last spring with our current year seniors, and show you why we created the action plans for our ACT that we did. So let's take a look at this. Several years ago, Tempe Union really made a commitment to professional learning communities, and so much so that 1 day a week is devoted time for our professional learning communities to meet. The fundamental purpose for these professional learning communities is really a collective inquiry and to really engage in that student achievement and discussion. You know, we learn by doing. You know, we've heard that over and over. There's books that are written about it, and we talk about that not only in what we do with kids in the classroom, but what we do with teachers. You know, more than 2,500 years ago, Confucius said, "When I hear something, I forget it. When I see something, I remember it. When I do something, I understand." So most of us, we really have a lot of insights and our deep understandings come from when we have some type of action where we reflect on that and then seek for ways to make improvement in that. Our profession also talks about the importance of learning by doing, and we do that with kids. We want them to be actively engaged in their lessons. We want them to have some experiential learning. So it's interesting sometimes that we sometimes are reluctant to apply that same principle, that learning by doing, to our own profession, to increase that collective inquiry and develop that capacity with each other in trying to learn and figure out what we need to do with kids in order to increase their learning. So for us to do this, We have to be more proficient in improving our effectiveness of the schools by actually doing the work of school improvement. Doing the work of school improvement is hard. It's messy. It takes a lot of thought. It takes a lot of time. We are changing mindsets about what we do during the course of the day with every single kid. And so this is messy because we've got traditional schooling that has gone on for many years, and we are trying to move not only just one school, which is hard enough, but an entire district to have that movement about what we do with kids. You know, when I was the principal of McClintock High School, we had an issue, and President Garcia might remember this. We had an issue with students doing homework. And so I engaged in the student leadership of the school, and I said, listen, we need for our kids to do that independent practice so our teachers can see what they have been able to transfer from the classroom setting into independent practice at night. And so the student body president created a mantra, and it was, do work. And so during PEP assemblies and during the video announcements, he would get on there and he would tell the kids, we've got to do our work, we've got to do our work, and pretty soon kids were doing their homework. It was so pervasive that on graduation night, during his graduation speech, he told everybody that he wanted them to go out and do great things when they graduated from McClintock High School. And he said, I want you to do work, do the right work. Well, there was laughter out in that football field, but that message resonated with everybody that was in attendance that night. For us, for our professional learning communities, to do the right work, we had to make some cultural shifts, some shifts in thinking with our staff. The next two slides share with you a little bit about what some of those shifts that we're trying to make. You can go back to the last one. The very first shift was really in the fundamental purpose. You know, in our mission, we have excellence in teaching and learning. Part of me thinks we should flip two of those words around, excellence in learning and in teaching. The focus is on the learning part, where it used to be the focus on the teaching part. There's also a shift in the use of assessments. We used to have assessments that were long, that we call more summative, that they might have been at the end of a unit, but we didn't have a lot of frequent assessments in between to kind of guide our thought process and to determine if kids understood what we wanted them to do. Our fine arts people get the thought about frequent assessments. They do that repeatedly throughout their classroom every single day. Our world language teachers do that all the time. Some of us used to call it, when we were busy learning Madeline Hunnard, the guided practice and monitoring and adjusting when kids learned or didn't learn. So we're looking, that shift is to have more frequent daily interactions with kids between major learning objectives to find out if they understood what we wanted them to learn. Another shift, and this is a big one, so big that Dr. Mendeville wanted this one bolded. This one is a shift in the response to when kids don't learn. That it's not okay for us to just continue down that road when we know that kids don't understand, but we need to put things in place daily so that we have interventions in that classroom time. We might have a bigger tiered intervention where that might be in an ACT lab setting or a peer-to-peer tutoring setting. We're doing that. We've invested lots of money in our multi-tiered systems of support at the school so that teams of people can rally around and take a look at why kids aren't doing well in school. There can be a variety of factors, but we respond now to when they don't learn. There's a shift in the work of the teachers. Before, when I started in Tempe Union, I worked in isolation. I did my lesson plans by myself. I designed my tests by myself. And rarely did I interact with other teachers when I was designing and thinking through what curriculum that I was going to be teaching. Now we do it in a collaborative setting. There's a shift also in the focus. We're more results driven. It's not about intentions, what we intend to do, but it's did we do it? And so we look at those results and the evidence of whether students learned or not. And the last one on this slide was a shift in school culture. That really, before when I started, there were different departments, but now all these departments integrate and work together to try and at least create some integrated themes that run across different disciplines. So we've made a commitment to that interdependence with one another. The next shift that we were looking at had to do with professional development. And we knew that if needed to make these shifts and really be results-driven and focus on the learning of it, that there needed to be a shift in professional development. And that needed to be embedded during the workday. Years ago, it was a sit and get, that's what we used to call it, where you'd sit down, someone would speak to you and teach you something, and then you'd go off into your classroom. Nobody ever knew whether you really implemented that instructional strategy or not. But now our shift is, no, this needs to be embedded in our professional learning communities, and we utilize data to drive some of our professional learning in that. We want to articulate, we want to look at our PLCs to see all of our PLCs are at different levels, just like all of our teachers, just like all of our students. So you look to see where that professional learning community is in relation to their knowledge and their ability. We look at where we want them to be and how we minimize that gap of where we need them to be. In our professional learning, we know that it's ongoing, it occurs, and it's just part of that routine work of the PLC. Another shift is we're learning by doing. You know, that's a difficult thing. Many organizations out there have the luxury to be able to do the planning and then apply the planning later. We have to learn and do at the same time. And we have to adjust often because we're learning what's working and not working. And then we need to look at the impact of what we're doing on the evidence of improved student learning. And that really to take that responsibility of whether our kids are learning or not learning, that's a major shift in there. I mean, it is. It's that making a difference for every single kid that's really, really important, and that's a hard concept. So we looked at those shifts, and those shifts occurred in the past 5 years. Then last year, we had an accreditation review team that came in. And they look at a variety of factors, but there's 3 different domains that they look at. There's a leadership domain, there's a learning domain, and there's a resources domain. And so what they did is they went in, they did some walkthroughs of classrooms. There were surveys of parents, of community members, of students, of teachers. They gathered all this information. There was a collection of artifacts. And what they did is they spent 2 days at each site. And they came up with those things that were so strong that they wanted that school to know that these were areas of strength, and they wanted them to continue to do that. They also identified areas of refinements, maybe some small refinements. And then they had some areas for improvement. What we did in teaching and learning is we looked at all 6 high schools, and we thought there's got to be some patterns that emerge from our district that we can, as a district, really work on together to improve. What we've provided to you on the next 3 slides are the patterns that came out of our accreditation review team. The first one was under leadership. They wanted us to engage in a continuous improvement process that produced evidence, including measurable results for improving student learning and professional practice. The second one is they wanted us to develop a formal process for consistent data collection. And the third one is they wanted us to collect and analyze a range of feedback data to inform our decision making. What we did is Dr. Lexick and I at the beginning of the year brought forward to executive team and to administrative team every single month what were the data points that we were going to look at. And those are the things that guided our data conversations at the site level between the executive team and the administrative team. The other thing we did is we looked at, okay, what is going to be the range of data that we are going to collect? You're going to see that there was kind of a 2-pronged approach to our data collection. We not only have to teach to the state standards, we also have a state assessment, and that's the ACT. So we looked at those 2 factors about how we can utilize that data to guide our decision making. So that's what we looked at. The second domain is the learning domain. And in this one, the patterns we found, they said instruction is monitored and adjusted to meet the individual needs and learning expectations. The second one was that learners have equitable opportunities to develop skills and achieve content and learning priorities. The third was that educators gather, analyze, and use formative and summative data that lead to demonstrable improvement of student learning. And the last one is that we continually assess programs and organizational conditions to improve student learning. So this is what we did. We look at how we monitor and adjust within our classroom. And so we're looking at providing information to kids, and then in that loop after major learning objectives, having some way to identify whether kids learned that skill or not, so to continually monitor. That second idea about having equitable opportunities, we looked across our district about the rigor of coursework that was offered at different sites. Some of our sites have a larger student population, some have a smaller student population, so it impacts sometimes your course offerings. What we included this year were courses called collaborative courses, where we paired two sites together. We brought the APAs together and said, what are the courses that normally are difficult to make on your campus? How can we collaboratively offer those courses? And so we've got kids on two campuses taking courses with one another so that they all have those equitable opportunities to be able to select those courses. The third one, in terms of gathering formative and summative data, as I said before, that formative data, we want them collecting daily. It doesn't have to be a major quiz or anything like that, but if you know specifically what you want a kid to be able to know and do, you need to gather that information every single day so that you can pull groups of kids in for small group instruction at the end of the hour, or you know when they come in the next day which kids need a little extra time and what you need to do to review and maybe possibly go over some different things. So we're looking at all of those different things. We also knew that some of our kids needed some extra tutoring or support. We designed a peer-to-peer tutoring program within our district. Desert Vista had that tutoring program. It was a beautiful tutoring program that was started. What we've done is Brian Johnson, who was here, I think last year, to be able to share information about that. Brian now has worked with every one of our sites, and every one of our sites has a peer-to-peer tutoring program this year, something that we're very proud of. The third area that they gave us feedback on had to do with our resources. They wanted us to plan and deliver professional learning to improve the learning environment, achievement, and our institution's effectiveness. They wanted us to provide an induction, some mentoring and coaching programs, and they wanted us to integrate some digital resources into the teaching and learning and operations of our district. What we did in response to that, we now have a professional development coordinator, Maggie Fountain. And so she works with our site coordinators and she works with our content specialists to design professional development that's coordinated throughout our district. We're also working with our principals and our DLs. We're doing a professional development, a 3-year plan. So we're looking at what are those foundational skills that we believe all teachers should know and be able to do. How do we take those skills and map that out from year 1, 2, and 3? We're looking at different areas. We're looking at the teaching, the instructional strategies, how to engage kids. We're looking at developing our leadership capacity. What do we do with our site administration? What do we do with our department leads to lead some of those discussions for improvement? And then we look at how we're going to help support kids during the road of acquisition of skills. So those 3 things. And I have to share with you, our ed techs that Dr. Alexic works with each week, they have done a fabulous job in the integration of our digital resources. They work with their sites, they work with their departments, and really work one-on-one with many teachers to really hone their skills and how to integrate technology into their classroom. We've got some great resources that are aligned with our textbooks and others, and so they've really done a nice job working with them. So let's go on to how we then designed our goals.
Thank you. I'm going to have to move this. I'm a little shorter. So good evening, President Garcia, members of the board, Superintendent Mendeville, and executive team. As Mrs. Hilgers outlined, the cognitive feedback is not the only data point that we look at as we develop goals. So we also focus on both the state and federal requirements, and those really fall under the state standards and then the state level assessments. And for this year, those state level assessments include the ACT Aspire ACT, and AZ-SCI. So when we look at assessments, we look at both content and how that relates to what we're currently teaching in our classrooms, and if we need to adjust our scope and sequence to ensure that we're teaching the content assessment and the state assessment. But we also focus on test prep and test taking strategies. And so the ACT is really half content, half test taking strategies. So you'll see as we go through our goals that we spend equal amount of time on both of those. So in informing our district goals, including Cognia feedback in both state and federal requirements, these are the goals that we've outlined for the district. So you'll see that that first one is related to ACT and ensuring that students show improvement on meeting the benchmark for ACT in all content areas. The next two bullet points talk about or relate to college and career ready indicators. And this is an assessment that includes a multitude of different data points. So a student can gain points in this indicator through grades in core and non-core classes, but also participation in internships, CTE completion, completion of FAFSA forms. So there's participation in an AP class and then a performance on an AP assessment. So our goal is to increase students' ability to achieve these points and to minimize the number of students that are not receiving any points in this indicator. We also look at graduation rate and focus on improving that, as well as decreasing our dropout rate. We also focus on decreasing the number of students that are identified on our early warning list. That measure is a longitudinal measure that looks at student performance over the course of the time that they're with us. And so it looks at historic performance in both core and non-core classes, but it also includes measures of attendance, discipline. It looks at membership in an EL program, a special education program, a Title I program. And then that last bullet point also focuses on decreasing students' absence rate and improving their attendance in school. So once we look at all these data measures and we create these district goals, we don't really develop them completely in isolation. So after we have created these goals, then we share that with each of the site administration. So this year, Mrs. Hilgers, myself, Dr. Frimmer, and Ms. White went out and met with each site administration. And we looked at data, a number of different data points, and really focused on the ACT action plan and how are we going to respond to the ACT data and ensure that students are successful this year. We also focused on the CCRI indicators, specifically the dual enrollment, the AP and IB enrollment, CT program completion, as well as the multi-tiered system of support. So reducing chronic absenteeism, focusing on graduation rate, decreasing dropout rate. We also have shared these goals with department leads, and they were really instrumental in defining the ACT content-specific plans of how they would like the ACT plan to be rolled out within their departments. We've also worked with cadres on informing that action plan and looking at the curriculum that they're currently teaching and how ACT can fit. We didn't want students to feel like now I'm doing ACT prep and now I'm doing content, but really show them that overlap. Sometimes that overlap is a stretch, but oftentimes there's actually a nice balance between the two. So in the next couple of slides, what I'm going to show you is the ACT data from 2021. So this is last spring's data. It's based on juniors of last spring, our current seniors, because this was our baseline data. This was the data we used to develop our ACT plan. I'm also going to show you practice results from the current juniors this year that we administered in the fall and in the winter. The focus of the rest of this presentation is to show you how this data relates to ACT. We do the same type of analysis for assessing how students are mastering standards. And when we look at standard mastery, then we focus on the fall progress assessment, semester final exams, and grades. But in the next couple of slides, I'm really going to focus on ACT. I just wanted you to know that we do that for multiple measures. So last spring, when we looked at student performance last spring in 21, this is their performance on the ACT English assessment. So you're looking at average scale scores across schools. The benchmark is set by ACT, and what the benchmark indicates is if a student reaches this benchmark or performs higher than the benchmark, they have a lesser chance of needing remedial classes in college. They also have a higher probability of obtaining a C or higher in college level courses in that content area. So we really want to get students as close as possible to that benchmark. So if you look at that data, we have some schools that their average scale scores were above the benchmark and some that were below. In addition to looking at overall scores, what we also looked at is which particular areas within the English ACT assessment that students struggle with the most. And we try to find a balance of what are they struggling with and what is highly represented on the test. So for English, what we chose to focus on were conventions of English language. So this shows you the benchmark for math is set at 22. You'll see the average scale score across the schools. When we looked at data, we decided to focus on geometry and algebra. Those seem to fit the best with what content the juniors were in at that time, and that was the area that students were struggling in the most. Math is very comprehensive, so there's many areas that we could have focused on. This is the reading benchmark score set at 22, and you'll see the average scale score across schools. For reading, the focus was on key ideas and concepts. And then the benchmark for science is set at 23. So you'll see the average scale score across each of our schools. When we looked at data, we saw that students struggled mostly with data interpretation. That was the highest percentage on the ACT science assessment. So it was an area that we decided our science departments will focus and help students improve in that specific subsection.
And these were last year's juniors.
Correct. These were last year juniors. So this was our baseline data. This is the data that we used to say, we're going to create an ACT plan to ensure that our current juniors are successful on the upcoming spring assessment. And we're going to focus on specific areas that we have seen that the prior cohort struggled with. So when you think about our plan, we looked at data and identified areas of content to focus on. We also developed a number of resources for teachers to use with students that focus on test-taking strategies. How do you guess strategically? How do you select which passages to read? What are some common misconceptions or ways that ACT asks questions to kind of help you narrow down what the correct answer is? The third component of our plan was practice. So we know that the more students engage and take the ACT assessment, the better they get. Sometimes just taking the test improves a student's score. So we have, for the current juniors, we have provided a practice assessment in the fall, so that was administered in November, and then another practice assessment just now in February. So what you're seeing here now is the average scale score across those two administrations for the current juniors. So it's a different group of students than the slides that you just saw. So you'll see that in English, there's a nice improvement from fall to winter. If we look at this data by concept, so conventions of English, which is what we focused on, the chart looks exactly the same. So there's nice growth in that particular area of focus. This is the math component of the test. So you'll see the fall and the winter results, and you'll see improvement across all schools. And these charts look the same for both algebra and geometry, so the two areas that we focused on specifically in course instruction. These are the results for the reading assessment. So you'll see that in a number of schools there isn't a shift in the average scale score. The reading section focused on key ideas and concepts. Reading is a very broad skill to teach. It's not as fine-tuned as maybe some of those skills that we're teaching in English conventions or in math. So I didn't expect to see a huge shift because this is not enough time. We really tested in November and then we tested in February. We do continue to encourage reading across the curriculum. We've purchased Newsela, which mimics the ACT assessment, provides students with high Lexile level text to read and text-dependent questions. So we continue to practice that. Both the core and non-core areas are helping in this initiative. So we're hoping that with additional practice, we'll see some movement in those scores. And then for the benchmark for science, that's set at 23. And so you'll see that at some sites, we do have improvement. Some, the scale score hasn't changed, and in some, there's a slight decline. For science, this is the last component of this ACT test, so we think that student fatigue had something to do with it. The other thing that's important to remember about science is that they actually have 2 state-level tests that they're preparing for. So they have the ACT, but they also have the AZ-Sci. And while the tests assess similar content, they're structured very differently. So they really have to split their time between standards and 2 state-level assessments. So I think they're doing an amazing job of kind of meeting all those goals. So all this practice is really geared up to prepare students for the testing season that's coming up. So you'll see that's the calendar of the assessments that we're preparing students for. So March 22nd, and that's really tiny, I can't read it. And March 24th, you'll see that the juniors are taking the AZ-Sci. We split the schools just so that we can provide, all these assessments are online, and so we really want to provide technical support. So we have 4 schools on the 22nd and 2 schools on the 24th taking that assessment. And then you'll see the ACT is on April 5th and April 7th. And then in between there, we have ACT Aspire, which is our assessment for 9th graders, and that's a 2-day test. So those freshmen are taking it both 4-6 and 4-8, just because it's a longer test, and we had to split it across 2 days. So our response in terms of the winter practice assessment, today, actually PLCs used their PLC time to reflect on looking at student performance, identifying areas of weakness, and kind of planning when they return from spring break in the 3 weeks that they have remaining, whether they're going to focus on. Each site also has a site-level action plan that goes through some of these components. They focus on how are we going to ensure student readiness, teacher readiness, parent readiness, promoting this reading across the curriculum, and really targeted intervention in areas that we're seeing students continue to struggle.
And so to wrap this up, you know, leaders of the past knew how to tell people what to do. But the leaders of the future are the ones that know what questions to ask. So when you look at people that guide those the school improvement at their site or at the district level, they're not going to have all the answers to things, but what we want them to have are good questions. Good questions that facilitate discussion, that build a shared knowledge of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and it's to put students first. And that's basically what we want our leaders and our department leads to do. You know, your role isn't easy. Our role in this room isn't easy, but I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to ask you to keep us focused on putting students first. I want you to keep us focused on facilitating this dialogue about how our kids are doing. I want you to keep us focused about asking the right questions and helping share that understanding. Because teachers go to you, staff members go to you. Sometimes they go to you disgruntled about some of the things that teaching and learning want them to do with our students. And I hope that you help share that understanding of why we're doing what we're doing. And I want you to help keep our eye on the target. Help keep us that when we share with you, this is how our kids are performing, this is our plan of action, this is what we're going to do, that we monitor and that you hold us accountable for those things that we say we're going to do for our kids and for our staff. Keep the conversations flowing with us. And to be very honest, I am just pleased that we're here tonight to not only begin this conversation, but I hope it's the first of many conversations about how our kids perform in Tempe Union. So thank you for this opportunity tonight.
Thank you so much for your time and your presentation, and don't you worry, we will make sure we will continue asking these questions. So I know for a fact this board has questions, but I do not see any buttons. Who would like to go first? All right, Member Braza.
Good evening. Thank you for the presentation and more importantly for the hard work. It's a lot of work to put a lot of these goals into action, and get into the details. So I appreciate that. Please convey, to everyone, all the way down to the staff members. Yeah, just everyone. I really appreciate the aspect of the equity in learning in the classroom aspect. When I think of, does this school have microbiology course, or does this school have Calc 3 or Advanced Calc, various classes. And, I appreciate that there's that ability that we're looking into to be able to bring students across campuses to be able to take those. I think that's going to be very important, because I understand that we can't always have every program at every classroom or in every school. So I appreciate that, because I think that's a model that is going to grow, and especially with the focus on assessments. I like that. It was continually assess how are we doing, and what can we do better. I think those are very important questions to just ask in general. So I really appreciate that it's part of the foundation of the teaching and learning. I don't really have any questions. I mean, I can always, I would love to meet with both of you and just kind of wrap my head around more of it, and so that way I can be supportive. I believe for me I'm looking at goals in terms of for consideration in the future. I'd like to have the committees or the district in general look into students in terms of success and goals, not just in terms of secondary education and college, but also saying, career pathways. There's a lot of students in the district that don't have an interest, maybe not even now, but maybe later, in going to college. So to me, the data would not reflect that, that decision, even though they may end up there if they may not take the ACT or SAT. So I feel like that would be lost. Also, there's many students that are getting into construction, automotive technology with Tesla, with Google and Waymo, with all our construction companies, and a lot of them are starting students out of high school at $40,000 to just start. They need those positions filled, and they said we would love to train. So there's also companies like Google that are innovating the aspect of we don't want you to go to college. We want you to come here. We have our own college we're building, because we want to train you and under our culture, under our context of technology, and think about innovation in that aspect. So, in the future, it's probably going to be to where a company like Apple is just going to want you out of high school and saying, come work with Apple. We want you now, and we'll catch you up. And there's also businesses that also say, you know what, come work with us, but at some point in your career, if you want to go this direction in our company, you will need, college. You will need a college education, a bachelor's degree. There's management aspects, and then that's when companies say, we will do tuition reimbursement or assistance. And so then, the student may go then at college and be very successful. So that's where I want to see if we can look in the future how we can measure career readiness or career pathways of students that are going that route out of high school, and how we can keep data to say, we have X amount of students going to work with this company right out of high school, and this company, or this income level, or however we measure success in that aspect. And it goes with the fine arts. Sometimes, it's common to hear the aspect of a starving artist. So, the aspect of what is success, doing what you love, even at the lowest income level, you can have much success and happiness. Hemingway wrote about it in one of his books I read, about him and his wife in France and their experience during that time. And they had a flat, and they had a bed, just the mattress, and they would live simple, wine, cheese, go to the park, enjoy, and go mingle with their friends. And I thought, they don't have the wealth financially, but there is that wealth of, look what he brought. Look what Hemingway brought to American literature. So there are ways to measure success. So that's all I want to say is keep in mind how we can quantify that, and celebrate. We have students in athletics. I have signing day. And Diane Mielmans, we're talking about it, and we're just saying how great would it be if they had signing day for students going into, the career, construction technology, or a computer-based or technological, corporate company, or anywhere, or an artist that's now going to work at this foundation, out of high school, we can have a signing day. And, that I think brings energy and pride to the departments, to the teachers, to especially the student and the families, and ultimately to our community. I think that, we have such a great community. Tempe is one of those, what I always say is we're a small town in a big city. So we do things very community focused. So I just wanted to throw that in. I think this is wonderful. I appreciate, again, looking at assessment, looking at equity, and how we can improve. And again, I firmly believe that, this help in the ACT, SATs, doing the ASVA together is going to really be exponentially important, and we're going to see the success out of this almost immediately. So I appreciate, all the time and effort. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Member Barraza. Next, we have Vice President Montero.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank you for the presentation and give thanks, obviously, to you and your department, to all of our principals here, our TSCA reps here. I know this hasn't been easy. We, obviously, we're not dealt a very favorable hand with the pandemic, and so, I just want to thank you for all the work that you've been doing to keep us on top of it. I did have one question, I think, specifically towards, the development of these ACT plans, looking at the site level action plans. I know, like you said, it's been very difficult having to plan and implement at the same time. And I know we had talked about this when we met earlier on, and I'm kind of curious, what does the student involvement in that process look like? Because I think that student input, especially in some of the strategies that we're trying to implement in the classrooms and trying to get input on what's working, what's not working, I think is some very key conversations that we can be having. So, what is the process of getting, is there student input, or how can we incorporate that student input through these plans and moving forward as well?
That's a great question, and actually in our school improvement process, we're to be utilizing our student input, our teacher input, our community input in how they're perceiving we're doing things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this over to our site leadership and ask them to be able to share with you how they involved, if they did, students in their site action plans. Would any of you like to offer?
Don't feel like you're being put on the spot, guys and girls, ladies.
Good evening, everyone. At McClintock, we have our students every day when they have audio announcements to the whole school. They actually have an ACT, a tidbit, a study skill, some strategy that they share with the whole school. Our activities department is also working with our student body, our student government, in a variety of areas and how they can engage more students, whether it's pep assemblies, whether it's Charger Madness, where we're going to have kind of an ACT competition during lunch, just various activities that we are going to engage students in to get them excited about the ACT preparation.
Is there anybody else that wants to share what they've done at their site?
Good evening, everyone. We use, very similar to McClintock, but we use the power of social media. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you will see Test Tip Tuesday from the Pride, and then there's a question of the day on Thursdays. So we've been having kids come up, they fill out for a gift card so that they can win a gift card for answering the questions of the day on Instagram or Twitter and Facebook. So we post them on all three sites.
We also, and I'm thinking about this right now from your question, probably would be a good idea after our practice assessments and after the ACT to ask students, what were the things that we did in our practice opportunities that were most beneficial to you? What were the things that we can put aside that weren't as beneficial, but really get kids, our junior kids, and say, this is what you need to do. This was really helpful to me.
We actually have that in our plan. so we will do that.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Next, we have Member Hodge.
Thank you. I want to first start off by just saying, as all my other board members, great presentation. I've always, my 7th year listening, thank you so much. You do phenomenal. To all the principals, assistant principals, thank you for all that you do. Teachers, thank you. I know this has been a hard couple of years, and well, I can't say that. It's been hard for a while, but the pandemic just even made it harder. So thank you guys. I just have a couple questions. My first question started off with, I love the idea that you actually have different, the schools can get together if it's not a course that's doing. How do they do that? Is it that the kids go to the schools, or is it a virtual class that is one teacher teaching it virtually to all the other schools?
Principal Banks, in your collaborative class, are the students virtual in the school, and they observe the teacher that is teaching at Mountain Point, correct? Yes.
Is that a core class, or is that like an elective class?
It's an advanced class, isn't it? Is it an AP class?
Wow. Is it any possible way that, I know that we had some problems, like getting Mandarin and stuff. Is that going to be something that we can do, like virtual, if we do like more electives too? Like, I know that Desert Vista has the only Apple program. Is that going to be something, is it just going to be core, or is it going to go into
We have the
electives too?
ability to do this with a wide range of courses, and what our APAs do is get together and see which are the courses that best meet the needs of the two sites, so we can do it from any course.
I love that idea. And how would the students get to know that it's a course if they don't have it at their schools, they can actually, it could be taken at Desert Vista? Is that going to be something that's going to be in the handbooks, or, just
It's part of
curious?
the course request sheet where kids can sign up for different courses, and then that they understand that this is a collaborative course that's done virtually.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
communicated to them.
Thank you. And I have a question about the graduation rate. I see that we have 90% or higher. That's where our goal is. So where are we actually at?
We took a look at that. I believe two of our schools, I'm doing this, I believe two of our schools are at 90% or better. I think our other schools are not.
Okay, thank you. And dropout rate, that's another question. I know we want to decrease it by 10%, but I'm just curious of, you don't have to answer it right now, but just to know where we're at actually when it comes to dropout rate too.
I don't have that one off
No,
the
that's
top of my
okay. You don't
head.
have to answer right
I'd have
now.
to get back
I knew
to
that
you.
wasn't going to be an answer that I would get tonight, but those are a couple of questions that I had. And thank you so much. As I said, it was a great presentation.
I want to respond just to two things, if that's okay. One is I have been concerned with having course accessibility to our students across the district. So with classes, because we are in a teacher shortage, and there are times, and not solely for that purpose, but one student at Tempe High should be able to take a class at Mountain Point or Corona, or vice versa, because that's happening. So we have, over the past 2 years, I think the pandemic, one positive outcome, if there's any, with this pandemic, is that it forced us to really advance our technological capabilities, and we purchased resources and cameras and a whole variety of support, technology support to make that happen. So we're able to do that. We worked out bugs. The Bell schedules are part of that, so we're coordinating that effort even stronger and tighter for next year, so that we can offer more courses that are collaborative in nature, so everyone has equal access. And then, and that's been a priority for me since I've been nagging Mrs. Hilgers for years, and we're there now, so that's good. The other thing is that I do have graduation rates that were sent to me by Dr. Alexic, and are these preliminary, or, because we're waiting for the 5-year graduation rates?
Yeah, the 5-year graduation rate gets released in the fall, so we won't have that until like September, but these are it's a year delayed, so this is a 4-year graduation rate for cohort 2021.
Right, so this is 2021. Corona was at 94%, DV 95, Marcos 79, McClintock 85, Mountain Point 88, Tempe High 79. That is factoring in the pandemic. And I think given the pandemic and the challenges that we had with students not in person for quite a while, and then having a variety of hybrid and in and out for lots of reasons, our students did very well because of our teachers putting in the time and effort to make that happen.
The overall state graduation rate declined as well, so you have that number.
Yeah, what is the
Just as a
state?
reference point, the state is at 76.
76, right.
So we're higher than the state in every one of our schools?
We've always been higher than the
I
state.
know, I just want to make sure to say that out loud.
Thanks, Member Hodge. Member James.
Thank you, and thank you so much for the presentation. To kind of piggyback off of what Member Hodge was talking about, these collaborative courses are really exciting, and one course that I keep thinking would be amazing to do would be that Yaqui language and culture class, because I think that there would be an interest, especially if it's across the entire district, and there would be the ability to work with the tribe and get that going. I think that would be really, really exciting. So thank you for bringing that up, Member Hodge. And then the graduation rate, to piggyback off of that, just looking at the graduation rate of our students is pretty high. And then looking just in Arizona, I think it's about 74% is the graduation rate, or 76 now.
Yeah.
And I know our ELL students tend to have in Arizona are well below. And I'd love to see the graduation rate of our ELL students in Tempe Union compared to the state. I'm hoping it's way higher. And then just seeing, that would be a really amazing focus, and I'm sure you guys are already on top of that, to help increase that rate. And then when you and I met, you had a great meeting and learned so much about all that you're doing, especially as you were gearing up for the ACT practice. And you were showing us the margin, the kids that were kind of like on the cusp. And I'd love to see. Yeah, the bubble kids, right? That were so close. And again, I know, not asking for the data right now, it would be wonderful to see those kids, how many of them did bump up from that bubble into where we want them to be, into the benchmark area. And what does that cusp, that bubble look like now? And just keeping our eyes on those that we can really push forward pretty easily.
You'd like the information of the percentage of kids that are proficient versus non-proficient in those areas?
In those areas, the ones, like when you were showing us, wow, there's this many that are so close. How many of them actually did bump up? Okay. I think that would be really great to see, because it seems like a lot of the areas and a lot of the schools really did a wonderful job. And thank you to our admin. I know that was a lot, getting all the ACT prep and working with staff and all that. So thank you for everything. This is really great to see.
Thank you so much, Member James. All right, I have a few questions, but I'll try to be quick so we can get the agenda going. How are we disaggregating the data to better understand the nuances of our students and where they're at and where they're performing and that growth plan for them? When it comes to, yes, we're looking at our regular education SPED, advanced honors AP, our federal program students, the whole gamut. How are we disaggregating that to help influence and illustrate kind of the analysis that we, need to work through to make sure that each and every single one of our students are getting the nuanced attention that they need?
I'm going to share from the perspective of the district programs, and then I'll let Dr. Alexic talk about some others. So when I meet with the directors in teaching and learning, we do a data analysis about our program effectiveness. And so Mr. Brown, who oversees Title I, who oversees EL, who oversees Indian education, he takes a look and we talk through all the different data points for his groups that he's responsible for. When we look at Dr. Boyle, she's special education, so she and I have those conversations. When I meet with Dr. Frimmer, we look at our CTE, our program completers, how they do in state assessments. So from those conversations, then they go out. Mr. Brown then works with his Title I facilitators at each site, works at looking at the data that he has extrapolated and what they need to do to increase their student achievement in the programs that they oversee. So we do that for program effectiveness. Are there other things that you want to add in terms of desegregation that could be included?
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about teacher use of this data, because one of the reasons we purchased Horizon ACT Practice Assessment is because it provides a large amount of different reports that are really quickly disaggregated. So we created, and students actually have access to their results. So when they log into their student view, they can see what they responded and what the correct question was, and they can do that and look at that by standard. So which standard did I struggle with the most? We created a worksheet that teachers can use so they can analyze data by period. So look at each class period and identify which were the items that that group of students struggled with, and kind of go over those questions with that group, as opposed to, you know, your third period that might have done really well on that item but struggled with a different item.
That's very helpful to know. Thank you. The other question that I have is, obviously, this ACT is very tied to numerous things when it comes to student success and district growth, et cetera. But how are we balancing out the test-taking fatigue and that stress that obviously is inherently placed on them? And to Member Barraza's point earlier, you know, a lot of these students, whether they decide to go to college or not, you know, we don't want to make them feel like this is dictating what their future will be. And because we know that data has showed that test results are not correlated to how successful you will be in life, in college, et cetera. But we want to make sure that they feel like they have the support that they need and are also just not burning out that impacts other aspects of their lives. So how are we balancing out that that fatigue?
You don't ask easy questions, do you? Do you know, part of it, and I just go back to my years as a CTE teacher, when we are teaching and developing a skill, we would first start off with learning the skill, but we stretched it out in a longer period of time. And then we started to increase the speed of which kids did things, and so there were different ways that we built that skill level. Part of it with the ACT and the fatigue is when you're starting off, let's say, with reading passages, it might be over a longer period of time, one passage, but you're teaching test-taking skills as well as what you do with those. And then you start to, our teachers then, as we went around and had conversations at the sites, that maybe you simulate that testing environment in your class as often as you can, so that maybe you are starting to cut down the minutes that a kid has to be able to read a passage and to move on to the next, so that you start to develop that skill level. Part of the reason that we wanted to do a digital learning day for February 23rd is we wanted to simulate that environment, so that the very first time that the kid took the ACT, that they knew what that was going to feel like. Probably in future years, I would suggest that we do that more than once, that we're developing that stamina in our kids. But I think we first start in the classroom when we're at the beginning of the school year, when we're starting to build skill level and things, and then really increasing that throughout the year.
May I add to that? Just as I think this is a focus for our PLCs, and I know the teaching and learning department as well, and that is to just naturally build in chunked assessments, you know, so to do formative assessments along the way that aren't extensive in nature, but students are equipped and are more acclimated to go, oh, I had this lesson for a day or two, now the teacher's going to assess to see how much did I learn from that. Because everything, it's leading to the district's summative assessments at the end of the quarter. And those are all aligned with the state standards, which is then aligned so that it's meaningful and they can put those skills into practice when they do finally take the ACT. And so I think the more our teachers practice, including smaller formative assessments through their instructional day, our kids are going to naturally build the stamina when it's time to take those tests, even more so.
I wanted to just add really quickly, because I think one of the, a part of your question is how do we make this test relevant to students that are not college bound? And that actually question came up from a number of principals. And so we created a presentation for students, but also a handout that talks about if you're not college bound, here are some reasons why doing well on the ACT could help you. And some of the things we listed are if you don't really have a lot of job experience, but you're applying for a job, submitting a high ACT score could help. If you're preparing for a certification exam, some of these test taking strategies could really help you on that certification. Some trade schools actually take ACT tests as they're not required, but they're always, accepted. So we've kind of tried to focus on and then we also listed a fact that maybe you're not college bound right now, but these tests are good for 5 years. So in 5 years, you might decide you do want to go to college and now you have a really good score.
Yeah, thank you. One thing that I do want to hit hard on is the balancing aspect of that stress and that fatigue that does impact the other parts of life, especially if you're focusing on trying to do well and improving, that, we can't all juggle multiple things at once, and we're going to, we can't be performing at those high levels on everything we do, and something's going to give up. And so I don't want us to have this feeling that our students start losing other aspects of their lives, and to really hone in and prioritize this. And if that's their priority, that's great. I just want to be mindful of how that impacts their day-to-day, not just in school, but also outside of school. Last question, I see we have a lot more questions and buttons pressed. Board members, I'll ask this last one, and then if we can go straight through one comment or one question, because we got to get going. The last thing that I have is how are we identifying the root issues when it comes to like our dropout rate and the early warning? Because while on data on paper it'll show obviously that we have X amount of students are dropping out and what that percentage is at each school, have we identified what those causes are, or are we asking those questions to our students? I'm just curious because of the goals and the efforts that we're trying to make.
I'm going to share this, and maybe the principals might add on to this, but we have those multi-tiered systems of support where we have teams of educators that come together. And so when they see that kids have multiple factors of why they might not be doing well, where it might be absenteeism, it might be low grades, they might be coming in and there's some social emotional issues, that team surrounds that student and tries to provide those supports. And so I think they try to prevent some of the students that aren't doing well or dropping out prior to them even getting to that point. Principals, are there other things that you would add from that?
Well, just at Tempe, we certainly try to catch, and the other campuses do too, we certainly want to catch kids early and apply those tier 2, sometimes tier 3 interventions for students so that they can be successful and graduate on time.
Great, thank you so much. All right, board members, real quick, we got one question, one comment. Member Braza.
I'll be quick. Okay, so of these models are often, there's complexities, many variables. So we look at things as many variables as constant, and eliminate them when we're thinking about this. I just want to, I guess, more comment, so that way maybe we can look into it more and look at correlation of data. As a teen parent, my hardest time in my class, if I can think in my whole schedule, was first period. It was tough to get to it on time because I was a teen parent. And we do have some schools that have early start times. And so I'm curious, like if we can look into the correlation of the absences and the successes of that first period particular class, because I'd always get the comment, you do so well when you're here, but when you're missing, that's what's affecting your success. And that was often an English class or something. It wasn't elective. So if we can look at that, I'm sure there's some staff members and students that would like to know about how we can look into improving the success of our early classes, ultimately. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Member Raza. Vice President Montero.
Yes, so I just wanted to piggyback off of President Garcia's comments, I think, and I know Member Barraza had brought this up earlier on in the conversation as well, and I think really the challenges that our students are facing this year, I think just having to relearn how to be a student, and I know that there is a lot of pressure on our students as well as our teachers and administrators, because we know the importance of the results and the scores have on our schools and on our district. And I think being able to balance that in some of the conversations that we're having, being able to have those conversations of, the score does not define you as an individual and as a student. It doesn't mean that you are a good student or a bad student. Some students don't test well. Some students are good in different areas, and I think especially the focus that we've had these past couple of years on the whole student, and really, especially when we're integrating some of the things that we've had, especially with social emotional wellness. When we have our students that are burnt out, our teachers that are burnt out, it goes both ways. And so I think integrating some of that when we're really taking care of those needs, I think we'll see those increase in the scores and the results.
Thank you so much, Vice President Montero. Member Hodge.
Okay, my question is going to be quick. What are we doing? Because I know the freshmen have a test they have to take. Are we using our feeder school information to help us to start building our freshmen to where the test taking is? Because I think that if we started even earlier, that could help out with even dropout, if we work collaboration with our feeder districts.
And we do. We have a data sharing agreement with our 2 feeder districts, so we get a lot of information on our incoming students. While I presented to you the practice data for juniors, we actually do practice with the freshmen and sophomores, kind of gearing them up towards the ACT assessment.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Member James.
Thank you so much. I wanted to just talk about the burnout as well, because that's such a great point. And I also want to balance it with, I was talking with my son who's going to be a freshman, and I was asking him about the practice test, and he's not a kid who loves testing, and he wants to kind of take it easy, find loopholes sometimes to things. And he was like, no, it really helps to be able to take a practice test. And it kind of, I was really happy to hear that from him, because he would be that kid that'd be like, I don't really care. But he actually really does see the benefit when he gets some practice. So I was very happy to hear that. It concerns me to think about doing more full days, because I don't know that might be the best approach, and I hope we look into that deeply. I think the idea, when we're looking at the science scores, for example, doing a practice test, and like Dr. Mendeville was talking about, chunking and having those opportunities to say, we're going to do science first today, and see, because that's also then hopefully giving them some validation of like, oh, I don't have total fatigue every time I get to science. I'm going to be successful, and I can be successful. And just being smarter, working smarter, not necessarily harder, it concerns me to think that we would be dedicating more days to full days of testing, because I worry that when they get to the real test, it's like, oh my gosh, I cannot do this one more time. So if we can look in best practices, and I know that's what you're founded in teaching and learning, is really looking at the best practices. I'm blown away by the knowledge that I hear from your department and the research that goes into everything. It's incredible. So just really being cautious with that burnout rate, and balancing that practice, because we know that there's that benefit in return that happens. So I think that's it, and I appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. No further questions. So thank you so much for your time and for your presentation. All right, next we have board policies. Board I-1, telework for first reading and adoption. Dr. Mendeville.
Thank you, President Garcia and members of the board. This particular policy being presented for first reading and adoption, but we obviously are flexible with what we can do with that, is as a result of the pandemic and not having a telework policy. And so, as you know, that policy that we bring forward here is meant to be general, and then the specificity of the details is in the regulation. And while I have included the regulation for you to consider and to ask questions from, and I'm sure some of you have questions around this, President Garcia. I know you do, and that's fine. The purpose of today is to look at the policy here, and let's have discussion around that first to see if this is something that we want to make amendments for before we go into a regulation consideration privately, either in board prep or individually at a different time.
Board members, any thoughts, comments, or questions on this item? Member James.
Okay, so I don't know how to do this, Dr. Mendenville.
I know, because I'm not sure how to do this either now.
Because I do have one concern that stems from the regulation, and I don't know if that's something that could be put into the policy to, like, how, so it makes me uncomfortable. I'll just say that, reading that.
What I would recommend, President Garcia, you can decide obviously, but maybe we should table this and come at it a different approach, because there are elements of the regulation that I have shared with you in board prep, which is appropriate, but it's not agendized here, and that's the issue that I have.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think also that this policy in general is too broad. I would want to have more delineated elements that go in are incorporated into this, because this, in my view, is too broad, and I would want to have more specificity. But yes, I'm happy to entertain a motion to table. So we can return to this at a later time.
So moved.
Thank you so much. May I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next, we have Business Services 1, Tri-District Intergovernmental Agreement for Legal Services. Dr. Mendenville.
We are fortunate to have Jordan LL as our Tri-District Legal Counsel. We shared Mr. LL with Kyrene Elementary and Tempe Elementary, and so his contract, if you will, is up for renewal, and it's for 5 years. The pay structure that is in place is that because we're a larger, we have a number of items and concerns that take up his time, around 50%. That's our portion of pay for this, and then Kyrene and Tempe Elementary are respectively at 25%. And this has gone through Denise Lowell-Britt of Udall-Shumway for your approval. I am of the understanding that I believe Kyrene has taken this and approved this yesterday. If I'm not mistaken, one of the districts did already, so we recommend the approval.
All right. Is that for this item? I don't remember if I pushed the button or not. Okay, got it. Board members, sorry about that. Board members, thoughts, comments, or questions? No? All right. I move approval of item J1. May I have a second?
I second.
Thank you so much, Member Barraza. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Next, we have J2, approval of Mojave Cooperative Contract to purchase Apple computers, peripherals, and services. Dr. Mendenville.
Thank you, President Garcia. We recommend that you approve this item. This is the purchase of iMacs and the Mac computers, MacBook Pros for our CTE department. The rest of the district is through, what's the other brand? PCs, there you go. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. So the entire district and the devices that students have are PC in nature, and this is the only department that basically uses the IMAX for obvious reasons like with Warren Cole and the photography departments and a variety of other departments. So we are recommending the approval of this item.
All right, I'm excited for this. Board members, any thoughts, comments, or questions? All right, I move approval of item J2. May I have a second?
I second.
Thank you so much. Member Hodge, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Next, we have item J3, approval of award of the RFP, the basic life AD&D and supplemental life insurance, flexible spending account and COBRA administration, and the RFP for self-funded medical claims, pharmacy administration and employee assistance program, and the RFP for voluntary dental PPO and HMO and voluntary vision coverage. Dr. Mandeville.
Oh, my.
Gotta get in the record.
Thank you. In December of 2021, we began the process for solicitations for the self-funded medical and pharmacy benefit management services. I'm going to ask that Mrs. Mielmans just speak on that because she was, that's her part of her committee and within the responsibilities of her department. So, and I know that there's a board member who would like to respond because he's a part of that committee as well. So, Mrs. Mielmans.
Thank you, Dr. Mandeville, President Garcia, members of the board. The RFPs in front of you for your approval are for our benefit package, which is currently in the 5th year. So we're required by law to go out and do the solicitation that you see in front of you. So the process included sending out the RFPs, getting the proposals back. We work with Siegel Consulting, who does work for us and helps us with the evaluation of the proposals. The process worked to where we actually have an insurance committee who is made up of certified, classified, administrative staff to actually go through this process with us. So the proposals were shortlisted. We then actually had a couple of companies come in and do interviews in front of the insurance committee. Then the recommendation was made by the insurance committee that went then to the employee benefit trust, which then looked at all of the information that was given to them by Siegel and the insurance committee, and the employee benefit trust agreed with what the insurance committee proposed, and so that's what you see in front of you. The recommendation is to continue with Aetna, who's our current provider for our medical and pharmacy benefits. We are going to be staying, like our flex spending, we're staying with the same company, which is P&A. Our life insurance is staying with Voya. We are staying with Delta Dental as our PPO for dental, our HMO. We're recommending switching to Cigna. And I think there's probably one more that I am forgetting. Our employee assistance program, we're going to stay with Aetna. And so we are very pleased with the results and wholeheartedly recommend what it is in front of you for approval.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mielmans. Member Braza.
Yes, that was wonderfully conveyed. I also want to convey that this is a difficult process considering the pandemic, and when you're looking at forecasting, how do you weigh individual actions of a pandemic to a normal business year? So it was very, very intensively looked at. I appreciate Siegel and John and Brian, and the work that they do, and the ability for them to be able to be around and look really deeply into this with the insurance committee. The insurance committee looked at a lot of plans, and I really appreciate the work that they did. So when it got to the employee benefit trust with us, the recommendation, I really appreciate because they were very focused on looking at our staff and looking at what kind of burdens and what kind of effect would it be like to have the various plans. So we're looking at it, and the Banner Aetna, the Broad Network plan, and the, let's see right here, the Performance Network plan, they increased by 3.3%. And so one of the big questions was, what do we do about that, number? And I don't think there was much of a question that the district was very much for making sure that the district picked up that cost for our employees so they would not incur that. I think that speaks a lot about our district and our mindset, about our employees and what we want them to carry in terms of the burden financially. And, I just wanted to make sure that that is stated, because to me that just shows a lot philosophically about what we mean, when we want to support our staff in the various ways. It also includes these conversations. So thank you to the district and to the insurance committee for that recommendation. As a member of the Employee Benefit Trust, I feel very proud of this, and I look for my board members to support it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Member Braza. I also wanted to comment and thank y'all for taking on the burden for the changes that the district is paying rather than the employee. Granted, it's modest change, but also grateful that majority, if not all, with the exception of a couple, either stayed the same or went down, and so there's overall savings, which is, as Member Braza stated, incredibly tough, considering all the circumstances we're going through. But this is great to see, and really I'm grateful for all that work that has gone into this, because I know it's not easy. At this time, I'll move approval of item J3 if there are no other questions or comments. All right, may I have a second?
I second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Next, we have item J4, approval of contract award for E-rate network switching and wireless access equipment. Dr. Mendenville.
Thank you, President Garcia. The Schools and Libraries Universal Service Support Program, commonly known as E-rate, helps schools and libraries obtain affordable broadband internet at discounted rates. The previous superintendent, Dr. Baca, began and introduced the E-rate to the district a number of years ago, and Mrs. Mielmans in the business department and the purchasing department have used it well, because it certainly has benefited the district in reimbursements. And so this is one of those opportunities where the district is using the E-rate formula to purchase new network switching and wireless access equipment, and they're recommending high-tech network and security solutions. We recommend the approval of this item.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mendenville. Board members, any thoughts, comments, or questions on this item? No? All right. I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank y'all for this one as well. I know there are governing boards across the country that are now starting to take advantage of the E-rate network, and being ahead of the game is very appreciative and the benefits it'll bring our district. So thank you. At this time, I move approval of item J4. May I have a second?
I second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Next, we have J5, approval of the MOU with Education Forward Arizona for the College Knowing and Going project. Dr. Mendenville.
Thank you, President Garcia. This is exciting because I think at the last board meeting, the College and Knowing and Going board representative was here and presented to you the exciting opportunity for Tempe High. And in the background, we were quietly, well, maybe not so quietly, working to get 3 other schools on board, and we were successful. The MOU with the Education Forward Arizona College Knowing and Going College Readiness Teams Project is through July 31 of 2024. But now with this, we've added not just Tempe High, but Marcos, McClintock, and Mountain Point. So we're thrilled with this because this just expands far more access for our students, for those who are college bound or college interested, because I think now you're Dr. Barraza almost. Yeah, Mr. Barraza mentioned that, our students need to be prepared and ready for many options. And while college may not be for someone on day one of post-graduation. It could be very well a year or two afterwards. And so this just provides us an outstanding opportunity to extend that access to 4 of our schools. So we recommend the approval of this item.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mandeville. Board members, thoughts, comments, or questions? No? All right. I move approval of item J5. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Next, we have item J6, approval to grant sidewalk easement to the City of Phoenix at Desert Vista High School property. Dr. Mandeville.
Thank you, President Garcia. This is with the extension of Loop 202. It is a 202, right? I always get the 101 to it. That, and the exit there is right at 32nd Street, which is just basically half a mile in off of 32nd Street, and Desert Vista is there. The first traffic signal is 32nd Street and Liberty Lane, and actually it's not a signal, it's a stop sign. So they're proposing to put a new traffic signal at that intersection that would alleviate traffic, but also provide a safer opportunity for community members in that area of the neighborhood to sidewalk, for sidewalk so they can walk. It's just a safer option. We approve the easement, granting of the easement.
All right, thank you, Dr. Mandeville. Board members, thoughts, comments, or questions? No? All right, I move approval of J6. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Next, we have J7, approval to submit application to A for Arizona Expansion and Innovation Fund and grant program. Dr. Mandeville.
Thank you, President Garcia. This is also kind of a wonderful opportunity for our district. Diane Welling, along with others in the Community Relations Department, but because Diane filters and manages many of our grants, this application for A for Arizona will request funding for Innovation Center equipment, supplies, furniture, and other materials. And in tandem with what the work and planning that will continue in planning for the Innovation Hub Center. It's not a name just yet, but innovation, it fits directly in line with what we're planning on doing there, but also what we want to replicate at our school, the other sister schools. So administration recommends the approval of this item.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Mandeville. Board members, thoughts, comments, or questions? All right, move approval of J7. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. All right, now our new business in K for graduation assignments. Board members, who would like to go first? For reference, last year, Member James went to Tempe High, Member Hodge and I went to McClintock, Dr. Mandeville went to Marcos, Member Braza went to Corona, Dr. Wilson went to Mountain Point, and Vice President Montero went to Desert Vista. Who would like to go? Oh, just kidding. All right, who pushed their button first? Me. Okay, Member Hodge.
I'm going to speak for myself and Dr. Mandeville. We're going to go to Corona.
I am?
You told me you were going to Corona.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
All right. That was Vice President Montero, and then Member James, so don't forget.
I would like to go to Mountain Point this year. I have a stepbrother graduating, so I got to hand my younger brother his diploma last year and get to do it again with my stepbrother this year, so I'm excited.
Right. Member James.
I'd like to go to Desert Vista. That was my first job, so it'd be kind of nice and sentimental.
Oh.
Aw.
All right. Member Braza.
This year's my 20th year graduation, so I'd like to go home to Marcos Tunisa and also to carry on a tradition. I'm hoping that Dr. Keller will continue to go with me. We started the assignments together and it just happened to carry, so yeah, we're going to Marcos. Okay. Great. That's good.
All right. Okay. I've been stressing out about this all week, y'all. I've been telling Dr. Mendeville, I was like, where do I go?
You didn't do it by yourself last year. You should be able to do McClintock by yourself. You got it.
Y'all. I want to go to all of them. Dang it. I really don't know. I hear y'all whispering. What did you say? Flip a coin. I know.
At least you only have two to choose from.
No, I didn't bundle up. Well, the thing is, so the pandemic has really messed up what I wanted to do last time was Marcos, but you know what? I'll stick with my alma mater. I go back to the McClintock. So yeah.
Yeah, all right.
All right. So June, do you have everyone? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Next, we have K2, 2023 governing board meeting dates. Board members, thoughts, comments, or question? All right. Hearing none, seeing none. Move approval of K2. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. All right, we're almost at the end, y'all. We have information items 1 for budget update. Dr. Mendeville.
Thank you, President Garcia, members of the board. Mrs. Mumins will be presenting on the board budget development and update. And this will be the first of a number of actual board updates as we move through the process. This is the time of the year when things start to speed up, and as we get more information from our legislatures, because they are in control of what we are able to spend and that. So we are at their mercy, but we will share what we have for each of our board meetings. Mrs. Mumins.
Thank you, Dr. Mendeville, President Garcia, members of the board. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to give you a quick budget update of where the Budget Advisory Committee is at. So what we're going to cover is the budget process, just as a reminder of how we work through the budget as we work towards our recommendation. I'm going to quickly just cover what it was the recommendations were for this year. Talk a little bit about the COVID-19 relief funding that we received and what we're expending it on and what we plan to expend it on. Where we're at right now regarding our budget discussions, and then also just a update as far as what we're doing in regards to the 2022 election in November. So the budget advisory process is a transparent process for budget development that the district has used for a number of years. And it has participation from all stakeholders, which is important because that brings different viewpoints and perspectives. And also, as a comprehensive team, we act independently in recommending and advising administration on what we believe the budget recommendations should be for the next fiscal year. This is a list of the Budget Advisory Committee members. You will remember last year that we added 2 additional members to the team, additional certified member and additional classified member. One of the things that's really very helpful in dealing with the Budget Advisory Committee is that we retain a number of the members from year to year because our budget process and the formula that we have to deal with in the legislature, it's complicated, and so it's nice that we have membership stay the same. This year, we do have a couple new members. Brian Gulliford is the principal at Tempe High. He's joined our group. Also, Jason Evoy from Marcos Deniza is a certified member on the budget advisory. And then, of course, Joseph is new as in his role here at the district. Right now, we are short one classified member. We're waiting for CTEC to recommend one more person for the classified representative. So the budget process begins at the fall of each year. We basically go over the previous year's budget recommendation. We talk about the annual financial report, which is presented to the governing board in October. We talk a little bit about known commitments. One of the things that we find out usually in the fall is regarding the retirement rate, whether it's going up or down. This year is actually going down, so that will create a little bit of budget capacity for us instead of taking budget capacity away. We talk about compensation, and then we talk about some of the other requests that come up during the year. As we work throughout the year, we receive up-to-date financial information as the legislature works through their process. We also talk about the governor's budget plan. And then, of course, as things come to us in regards to any additional funding that's coming either from the federal government or from the state government, we'd throw that into our recommendations. So in the spring, when we actually know the funding, we actually sit down and establish our budget priorities and talk about different funding sources, as I mentioned earlier, and then our budget recommendation is then presented to the superintendent during one of the governing board meetings. So this is pretty much the calendar, the timeline. So April and May is when we develop our budget recommendations. In May is when normally, if the legislature gets done earlier, we would do it earlier, but it normally happens in May where we make our recommendation to the superintendent. The superintendent can accept our recommendation, and in most cases that's what has happened, but there have been times where the superintendent has asked us to go back and maybe look at some other areas, or the superintendent can put a different recommendation in place, because that is then what is presented to the governing board for final approval in the May-June timeline. So quickly, I've put it in one page, so it's what our budget recommendation was for last year. So last year, our known budget commitments, which included the medical insurance increase, the increase in the retirement rate, and then also the fact that we had to move some funding from the classroom site fund into M&O due to the way that the governor gave us the increase for teachers. That came up to just over $900,000 total. We gave salary increases, which included steps for all employee groups. It included some equity adjustments for some employee groups. And then also, if you will remember, it was the final year of our compensation study that we were doing, and the classified employee group was the last group, and so there was also a percentage put on their salary schedule. And so that came to a total of just over $2 million. And then we gave some stipends this year. We gave some longevity stipends, and then we also gave our student engagement stipend, which totaled $2.7 million. So our total recommendations last year totaled up to just under $5.7 million. So just a quick reminder of the COVID-19 funding that we've received. The ESSER 1 money that we received, which was just over $1 million, was spent entirely on student laptops. The ESSER 2 money that we received was again used toward, a majority of the money used to support our one-to-one initiative. some counselor summer work, and then also some FTE for credit recovery teachers. That amount was just under 4.4 million. That is fully encumbered and is planned on being totally spent by the end of this fiscal year. The ESSER 3 funding, which, we had a very large committee that came together and made recommendations in regards to how we were going to spend that money. A majority of that money is being spent on FTE. Like, for instance, we've got classroom size reduction FTE that we have put into the staffing for this year. That's 20 extra FTE that will be put at the sites to assist in reducing class sizes for the freshman, sophomore core areas. We also have FTE there for behavioral interventionists. We also are using that funding for the additional 5 Care 7 counselors, so that makes 2 care counselors at each of our sites. We also are using that money to purchase the social emotional screener dashboard, and then also social emotional supports for staff, along with free summer school for the next 3 summers. That money does expire in 2024 and is a total of just under $10 million. This next slide is actually a slide that we just recently received from Rick Brammer, who does our enrollment projections. This slide basically shows the history of the district from 2000 till now, and then what's projected from now until 2031 as far as what the number of students that we actually had that were out of our district boundaries versus in district boundaries. You will see that we hit our high point for enrollment in 2013-14, and since then have reduced or fallen in our enrollment, declined. As you can tell, based on the blue bar, which is our in-district, that we have lost more students in our in-district boundaries over the years as the decline has occurred. That has a lot to do with aging neighborhoods, and so basically this is his projection of where we're at right now and where we're going as far as enrollment. The next page actually shows it more in numbers, which is helpful for me because I'm a numbers person. But again, in 2013-14 was our high point at 14,153 students. This is enrollment at our 40th day, so it doesn't correspond with our ADM. So it's truly just student count. Since 13-14 at our high point, we've lost approximately 1,000 students to where we're at right now at 13,136. And then his projections over the next 10 years is that we're going to see potentially another 1,200 student drop. But he will be coming to a future board meeting to actually go through his full report, which has all kinds of really good information. So now to switch over from enrollment to ADM. This slide here shows what our ADM was in 2016-17 to the current number. So you can see we went up and then we've been going down since. You will remember back last year that at this particular point in time, our ADM projection that we were getting from our reports from the Department of Education was we had 12,604. You will see that the number that I have down there now is 12,463. That's the actual number that we ended up last fiscal year with after all the reconciliations were done. And then you will notice that our ADM right now is up from last year, and that was somewhat expected, mostly because we knew we had a large number of online students, which is lower ADM, and then we had a large number of those come back to actually in class, and so that helps our ADM go up. So right now, ADE shows us at 12,533. We're expecting that number to change as we continue to progress through the school year. So where does that put us right now as far as where we believe that the M&O budget capacity is going to be at? So the total, this is where things are going to get a little confusing. So we are showing that based on our total weighted student count change, that our budget has a decrease. That's because we're comparing where we're at right now to what we adopted. And our adopted budget was on that higher ADM number that I spoke to previously. So based on where we were adopted to where we're at now, that shows a decline of $654,000 just from the ADM change. The base support level change based on inflation, so every year the base level amount changes per student, and so it is inflation or 2%, whichever is less. So the 2% is our max, and so with inflation where it's at right now, we're projecting that we'll get the full 2%. That brings into our district an additional $1.5 million. The teacher experience index, that, if you remember right, that's based on what our experience level is for our teachers in our district compared to other districts. And so all that information goes into the State Department, and they analyze it, and then we get additional money because we have very experienced teachers. That rate becomes final this month. The initial one we saw went down, the last one we saw went up, and so we're basically projecting we're just leaving it the same for right now until we actually know. And this 35,000 is just basically what's happening by the numbers flowing through the formula. Our teacher experience last year gave us an additional 4% on our budget, which was $3.1 million. And so they look at the amount of experience that your teachers have, that your salaries are higher, and therefore this is their way of compensating you for those higher teacher salaries.
So we anticipate this to be $35,000 more on top of the 4.1, just so that's clear.
That's correct, but that is just keeping it the same. So we will see whether it goes up or down, and then how does that impact but this is just based on the information that we have right now. The transportation revenue control limit, there was just a small adjustment of just under 13,000. Our M&O override, again, it's at 15%, and it's basically just part of the formula because the dollars are going up. The override will go up by 141,000. So right now we're looking at having an additional budget capacity from what was adopted for this current year to what's being projected right now of just over $1 million. Don't be shocked by that dollar amount. There are other funds that we look at. That's not the only funding we're going to have to make recommendations on.
It's in the positive. That's a good thing.
That is, absolutely. A very good thing. So the aggregate expenditure limit, as you all know, on February 21st, the legislature approved to exceed the limit for this fiscal year. So we are not required to make any cuts. If we had to make cuts, it was $17 million, and so we are very thankful that the legislature made the decision to exceed the limit. Next school year, though, we're going to be in the same situation unless they put an initiative to the voters to change the calculation of the limit. whatever that change may be, so, or the districts will all be in the exact same situation as we were in this year, waiting for them to approve it. So we'll wait to see what happens. And there's many ways that they can do that. They can do again what they did right after Prop 301 was passed and have just that taken out of the limit. They could get rid of the limit altogether. There are many things that they could do to negate this. So we will hope for the best. So last but not least, just quickly, we'll talk about the November election and what we're going to be doing as far as our process for getting our items on the ballot. So right now, we are gathering all the financial data that is going to be needed to present to the Citizens Financial Advisory Committee, who we're establishing, and we'll be sending invitations out to them in regards to different meetings that we request for them to attend in the month of April. We will be giving them information about 3 potential ballot questions. We currently do not have any bond funding remaining, so we are at this point gathering all the information about the projects that we're going to be recommending to the Citizens Financial Advisory Committee. And then once they settle on which projects we will be going forward, then that will establish what the actual amount is that we'll be asking the voters for. The M&O budget, which, as you know, the M&O budget override is when we go out and ask for approval, it's actually a 7-year approval. The first 5 years are at full funding, and then if you don't get it approved at the end of the 5th year, then it goes down a third in year 6, down another third in year 7, and then totally goes away in year 8. So we, in 22-23, will be going into our 5th year. So if the voters don't approve the override in November, then the next school year we will be reducing our M&O override by a third. Our current override is $12.8 million, so that would mean a $4.3 million cut to our M&O budget if that's not approved. Our district additional assistance override is a 7-year override, currently a 7-year override for $6.5 million for each year that's assessed to our taxpayers. We are going into, in 22-23, into year 7. So if that does not get passed, then we lose the $6.5 million that we currently have. And so we have approximately $11 million worth of budget capacity that is on the ballot for November. So we will take all this information. We'll give the Citizens Financial Advisory Committee a lot of detail as far as what is included in this, what we plan on using the money for, make them truly understand how it all works, because it is complicated. And then they will tell us what they believe the community will support, and we will make that recommendation to you in May. And then based on that information, then there's a call for election, and that's done by you, the governing board, to say, yes, we are moving forward, and these are the dollar amounts that we are going to be requesting our voters to support. And that's the end of my presentation. So, any questions?
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Munoz. Thank you for the presentation and the information. All right, we're going to start off with Vice President Montero.
First, just want to thank you for the presentation and for those that are here that are on the advisory committee for all your work. I just had a quick question. But before that, I also just wanted to take time to acknowledge, I know you have really taken the time to sit down with us and make sure you explain this process, the budgeting process. It's a very complex process, and I know even just one of the first couple of board preps that we, member James and I had when we first got on the board, you sat down and explained that through with us, so it's greatly appreciated and this helped a lot. I just had one quick question specific to a lot of the social emotional support that you talked about in the ESSER funds. You know, we've utilized a lot of those funds for additional Care 7, screeners, support for staff, et cetera. Obviously, like you said, those funds are inevitable, they're going to run out. And so is there initial discussions on being able to begin to slowly incorporate that into our budget so we can continue to have these resources once the ESSER funds run out?
That definitely does need to be part of our discussion. I don't think necessarily, because a lot of the ESSER 3 funds are actually going to start to be expended in 22-23. So as that works through, my guess is that this year there probably is not going to be a lot of that put in, that discussion, but definitely the following year, and then definitely the third year, so.
Perfect, thank you. And just one last quick comment. I know to those that are watching with the aggregate expenditure limit, please reach out to legislatures and ask them to give us a permanent fix, because we can't do this every year.
Exactly.
Yes, agreed. Thank you, Vice President Montero. Next, Member Barraza.
To reiterate what Vice President Montero said, yet appreciate all that you and your team do, and for sitting with us and answering any and all questions we have and anticipating those. We really appreciate it. Thank you for putting in the bond into context for the community. I think it helps for all of us to be able to wrap our heads around and have more productive conversations. So this is great, because now there's a reference for staff members and community members to go to this video and and get a good cursory understanding of it. I have a few questions, but I'll sit with you, and you can let me know more about it. I do know we talked about the burden, the tax burden, or the lack of. I think we really talked about what the bond would do in terms of how much support from the community in terms of individual tax, and because Tempe Union, from what you've conveyed, I believe, we have really strong commerce business partners, and and that helps us with the bond, and so the burden's not necessarily on the individual homeowner. Is that correct?
That's correct. We are one of the highest assessed value districts in the state, and so what that does is that helps us in when we do go out and ask. The burden isn't as large as it would be in other districts that don't have the assessed value that we have. So as we work through this with the Citizens Financial Advisory Committee, we will be coming to them and then also to you in regards to, okay, this is how this is going to impact the tax rate. Like for instance, like the M&O override won't probably have very little impact on the tax rate because it's just a continuation. The same thing with the District Additional Assistant override. Because we now are limited to 10% of our revenue control limit, which would be, we'd only be able to go up to about 8.4 million from the 6.5 million we currently have. So even that increase would be very little. The bond will have a bigger impact because we're not the bond is much more complicated because it's paying back the bonds that the taxpayers pay. So we will involve our financial advisor about how will that impact based on how we pay the bonds back. And so that's done over a 20-year period, or however you want to set the period of how it gets paid back. And so we're very fortunate. We are not close to our capacity. We do not have a lot of debt. So we're in good shape. It's just whether our voters are willing to support it or not.
I appreciate you conveying that. I could not do it so eloquently, so thank you. And that was my intention, was to get clarification for myself and to convey it to the community. And with the aspect of a 20-year, we're really looking at projects with longevity, correct? Like we're not really looking at, for example, technology may be because it changes, it gets antiquated every year, every 5 years. So the idea would be to be strategic, right? And I remember you talking to me about that and how they're looking at projects with that longevity. So I really appreciate that, because I think that's how we can really spend wisely taxpayer dollars and, into creating value in our school district. I appreciate that. On slide 12, there was an aspect of inflation with the base support level at 2%, and that's where it's capped, right? You said the lowest of the two, which is unfortunate because I believe Siegel commented that I think we're at inflation at 5 or 7%. And so do you see anything material in terms of that affecting us in terms of like procurement or anything that maybe we have to do minor adjustments, or what is your perspective on that?
Well, I think
the
that
inflation with what we get.
Yeah, the sad part is that we know that, inflation is impacting everything that we, everyday life, our gas and everything. But by the fact that this is the way that the legislature has set it up, to where it's inflation or 2%, whichever is less, that really kind of limits us as far as the additional funding that we get in order to give compensation increases.
Thank you for saying that, and I think it's important. I think we can get some of our community members to maybe look at that in terms of legislation and change it from whichever is less to whichever is more. So I think that's something maybe our advocates can look into taking to the Capitol for a change in policy and language on that. And that's the only really reason why I was asking, is because the inflationary aspect. And I sat with Julie Peterson in Food and Nutrition, and she's wonderful. I love her energy and what she brings to a district. She did convey that it's one of those issues right now with food and nutrition and being able to get supplies because of the supply chain. Some costs are going up, but I know her and her team are doing very well. It's very exciting. It's almost like buying concert tickets right now, with the hottest tickets, because you get a pack of something that's important for us for our food and nutrition, and just before you check out on the computer, it's gone. Someone else snagged it. So it's very difficult right now. They're being very creative. I know the districts and our feeder districts are working very well together to make sure that that's on top. So I really appreciate that. I know that the costs are going up in food and nutrition. And so we're also losing the aspect of the flexibility from the federal government, I believe, in terms of how we count our meals. In other words, one of the brilliance, I think, what they did was they started trying to pilot of putting the lunch, a prepackaged lunch or breakfast or lunch, into the hands of the students as they're getting on or off the bus. This has an effect of actually having a net positive for us financially, because the more students that get that lunch, the more we get funding for our lunch program. And so I think it's wonderful that we're looking at creative ways, and that our district across is looking at it and how we can be creative to get that money, and so I know it's going away, so that's another thing maybe we can look into taking to the Capitol of our food and nutrition budget, and maybe getting some supplemental money. But it just shows that the district, everyone's being creative, everyone's thinking about the taxpayer dollars and the efficiency of those dollars, and how we can utilize them in the classroom as opposed to plugging leaks. So thank you for the hard work, and that's all I have. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Member Braza. That is the 9:30 mark, just so everyone knows. Member Hodge.
Thank you. So since we had the 9:30 mark, I will just eliminate my questions at all, and I'll just talk to you directly. The only thing I'll say is, yes, anybody's paying attention, what Vice President said over here, reach out to your legislators. We do not want to be in the same predicament next year. This is something that we can handle now. So if we have to bug them, write them every day, call them, whatever we have to do, this will affect every child and every school in the state. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Member Hodge. I'll be really quick and just thanking you for your service to the district and to our students. You have helped us through so many different challenges, including the aggregate expenditure limit this year. But really grateful to you and your team for helping us keep a low property tax rate, if not the lowest, from my understanding, and the best bond ratings that we can get. So thank you. And there's not I don't know how else to convey that gratitude, but it's very much recognized.
Thank you.
All right. This time, are there any additional comments or questions? No? All right. Well, thank you so much. We will continue and wrap up the meeting. We have communications from governing board members. Who would like to begin? Member Braza.
I'm going to run through this pretty quick. Just we had a month, since our last meeting, so it's wonderful to see everyone. During that time, I went to State of the City for Mesa. I was invited. They thought that with me looking into partnerships with our business and nonprofits, that it would be beneficial for me to be able to at least talk to some individuals. And out of that, actually, I met Charlene Vasquez, and she's the Director of Strategic Partners for the Arizona Coyotes. And she's very excited about being able to work with Tempe Union. And through conversation, I talked to Burdetta, and she started another conversation with the Arizona Coyotes and their main person. So just board members, if the Coyotes contact you guys, there's already 2 board members that have been contacted. But it's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to what the district can and work with them in the future. It's very preliminary in that respect. I did visit B. Williams at Mountain Point. Wonderful, wonderful woman and incredible mentor. When I first showed up to the office, her office is essentially, I'd say, 30 yards at most, but we were stopped 4 times before we even got to it by students wanting to talk to her, working with her on various things. It was very exciting to see her, and she is someone that she grabs and goes, and she's always running around. So when I went to visit her, I met with some students, and she was very much go, go, go. So I love to see that type of energy in our staff members. I did sit with Julie Peterson, Food and Nutrition, as I mentioned earlier. Wealth of knowledge. I always encourage any one of our board members to sit with her, and I think she brings such good energy to our food and nutrition aspect. I met with Diane and Joseph in finance, and always wonderful to sit with you both. I got a little more caught up on the bond. I was asking those questions, and that's why I wanted to reiterate it tonight. I thought they were very important and exciting. That's where we're in a good shape. I met with Danny Perez, who I can't remember his title with the district, community intervention or coordinator. I can't remember the exact title. Yes, outreach, yeah. Wonderful addition to our district in terms of our multi-tiered system of support, and having his position is very, very refreshing, and it makes me very energized to see what he can do with it. I urge all our board members to go sit with him or to our school with him. Other than that, I just want to say that I appreciate all of you, all the hard work. There's still a lot to do, but we're heading towards a graduation period, and I know you guys all have your eyes on the ball and focus on student achievement. So thank you all, and I will see you guys next time.
All right, thank you so much, Member Braza. Member Hodge.
Thank you. So last night, I had the pleasure of going to a Tempe High band program concert with the president and Dr. Mendeville, and it was a choir, guitar, and and the band itself. Yeah, but what I really wanted to say is that it's been 15 years since we had a choir program at Tempe High School. It was a phenomenal time. And most of them were freshmen and sophomores, and they did, it blew me away how well they did. So I wanted to give that. I also went today to Corona. Mr. Sean Thornton had a discussion. It was a discussion about Russia and the Ukrainian, and if we should get involved. And it was a really robust discussion between our kids. I was so proud to hear how well they articulated and how well they have some strong opinions. So I just want to tell you, they're something else. They're challenging, and I love it. So that tells us that our world will be in a great place when the next generation comes up. We had a tri-district meeting, me and Diane. I went to Corona, Desert Vista, Mountain Point, and Tempe High basketball team, and I did go to the youth town hall. Dr. Mendeville and Mr. Denny and Mr. Moon, they were on a panel together. So congratulations to that. Dr. Mendeville, you did a phenomenal job on that. So, and also, my whole month, I've been down with pneumonia, so been in the bed. Thank you.
And still getting stuff done. Rockstar, Member Hodge. All right, Member James.
I'll make it quick. I know there have been quite a few performances. I heard great things about the band concert, and I was going to say it's really exciting to see choir back at Tempe High, and definitely exciting to hear how successful the concert was. And I know Marcos is having their musical. I think the opening night is tonight, actually. So I'm excited to check that out. I know that Miss Evans, the choir teacher over there, was interviewed, I think, Fox 10. And it was a really exciting thing to see the kids practice in the background. So it's going to be fun. And just happy spring break to all our students and staff. It is well earned, and get some rest, and hopefully everybody comes back ready for fourth quarter.
All right, thank you, Member James. Vice President Montero.
Thank you. So a couple weeks ago, I had to actually double check if this was since our last board meeting because it's been a while, but on February 9th, had the chance to visit all of our school counseling departments with Dr. Mendeville to thank them for National School Counselors Week and thank them for all the work that they do on behalf of our students and staff. And so that was a great opportunity to talk with them and thank them for all that they do. Similarly, this month it is Social Work Month, so I want to give a big thank you to all of our social workers throughout the district. Trip number 2? I'm kidding. And lastly, want to recognize our gifts and donations. We had $7,737.82 to Marcos Denisa from Tracy and Tim Estenson. We had $6,640.28 to Desert Vista from the Desert Vista Choir Boosters, $2,133.15 to Desert Vista from the Band Boosters, and then we had 3 identical donations in the amount of $1,033.34 from Marcos Denisa from the Darrell Vincent Youth Sports Foundation, at $834.77 to Desert Vista from Jennifer Panhorst, Cheryl Delson, and Anonymous. We had $400 to Marcos from the Arvapayo Farms Orchard and Inn. We had $200 to Desert Vista from Sharon Inhat, $100 to Desert Vista from Jailing Lee, $16 to Desert Vista from Trisha Rothery, $12 to Corona for Brett Nunn, $10 from Corona from Brett Nunn, and $10 to Marcos from an anonymous donor. And we had a donation of 6,000 packets of Celluwipes from Paul Rizzo to the district. So thank you to all of our gifts and donations.
All right. Thank you, Vice President Montero. Now I'll close us out. First of all, happy Women's History Month, everyone. Super excited to recognize the outstanding women that continue to make amazing contributions to the district and to us students. I wanted to recognize the DECA state winners. They had their state conference not too long ago, and I know for a fact Corona and Marcos had folks that have placed in the categories to qualify for nationals, so I'm super excited, and congratulations to them. One of them, Macrona, Robin Palmer, was my former DECA teacher, so I'm always proud of her and everything that she does for her students. But I want to recognize all of our DECA students. Also went to Tempe High performance with Member Hodge and Dr. Mendeville. And again, super excited to see our programs thrive. I drove up to Flagstaff to see our Jazz Mad performances for our schools. I was able to catch McClintock Chanticleers, Marcos Chamber, and the Mountain Point a cappella to compete. I was able to catch the Desert Vista Clinic for their, it was their magical performance, not their jazz. and couldn't catch Corona because they were on the next day. But remember, James was able to catch Corona and Desert Vista, Corona's Jazz, and I think Desert Vista's Jazz as well. So that was fun and really nice to see everyone perform and bring out superiors every single group that went up there, which is amazing because it's very difficult to get a superior rating. So congratulations to them. And also that we had our regional, this is very fine arts heavy if y'all couldn't know. We had regionals hosted at McClintock, so I was able to go to that and see the students that had made it into regionals. And hopefully they make it into state. Lastly, but not, the aggregate expenditure limit obviously has been a theme and a topic that we have all taken very, very seriously. While we are grateful that it has been suspended, it's still an issue as folks have raised. But I wanted to thank Megan Sterling for her help working with Vice President Montero and I on the op-ed regarding the aggregate expenditure limit. We don't want to be in the same position as we were this year. This was it was too close for comfort. And so there will be more legislative advocacy opportunities as we continue to address the aggregate expenditure limit, either through a suspension or a complete repeal of it through us and through ASBA. So keep an eye out for that. But I just wanted to thank everyone's efforts who helped address that, because that is a very, very big deal and should not be at the cost of our students. So that is all I have, Dr. Mendeville. Do you or the executive team have any communications?
I just want to recognize the hard work from my administrative team, the executive team, and our principals and our teachers. And as we embark on spring break next week, please take time for yourselves, relax, spend time with your families, your friends, your loved ones, but be safe. Some of you are traveling out of the country, some of you are traveling out of state, some of you are traveling to Yuma. I mean, whatever the case may be, but just be safe, but enjoy yourselves and take care of yourselves, and we look forward to your refreshed return on March 14th.
Dr. Wilson got it down. All right, thank you, Dr. Mendeville. Our next regular meeting is March 23rd, 2022. At this time, I move to adjourn. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you so much, Member Hodge. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.